Hey folks, I hope you're all doing as well as you can in these confusing and chaotic times we all now share. As for me, I continue to get by in much the same way as I always have throughout the course of my life. I have always been somewhat of an outsider, both because I was born with cerebral palsy and because I live in South Africa, which is an increasingly third world shithole. However, one positive consequence of this isolation is that it has turned me into a student of human nature, which is very useful when you have to read people and see what might be coming down the line so that you can be as prepared as one possibly can be to deal with whatever it might be. With that in mind, I have had some life lessons come into sharper focus than they have been in recent years, and I thought that perhaps they might be worth sharing with you today. In discussing these things, please understand that I do not consider myself to possess greater wisdom than anyone else. What I'm going to talk about isn't wisdom so much as a survival instinct that has been honed over time. The first thing to realize is that, sad as it might be, the vast majority of human beings will not have their minds changed no matter how well-reasoned or logical your argument might be. Most people are creatures driven by emotion and will cling to whatever makes them feel the best, regardless of how nonsensical or irrational their beliefs are. This is not something I came to understand quickly. In fact, if you go back and you look at the earlier videos I've made, I used to spend a lot of time trying to construct arguments against various ridiculous social behaviors that I had observed. However, eventually I came to see that there's not much point to it, because you will only be able to convince a tiny fraction of those who take the time to listen to you of the correctness of your viewpoint. The others can be confronted with facts, evidence, and all the reason in the world, and they will still continue to do whatever they want to do anyway because it makes them feel good. It is a far more constructive and less stressful course of action to channel that energy into your own life and making it as orderly and productive as possible. If you allow yourself to constantly be bogged down by anger and resentment, you will eventually become just as bitter, lonely, and depressed as the people with whom you are trying to argue. And if you're trying to argue with them, then you obviously see that to be like them is not what you want. Another life lesson which has come to light in recent days is just how powerful of a tool fear can be for the manipulation of crowds. Coronavirus lockdowns have provided us with examples of mass hysteria and delusions on a scale probably never before seen in human history. Whether it be the ridiculous claim that wearing a mask is an act of virtue, the unnecessary sanctification of ordinary healthcare workers, or the almost religious ecstasy that people are now exhibiting at the prospect of being vaccinated, the coronavirus lockdowns have shown just how irrational and muddle-minded human beings can be if they do not already have a strong moral foundation set up to protect them against the harsh realities of life. Perhaps the most disturbing thing for me on a personal level was that when these lockdowns began, people were unhappy with the fact that their freedoms were being curtailed. But given the evidence we had at the time, we all pretty much agreed that locking down seemed to be the most rational and safe thing to do. Now, however, even though we have seen that the coronavirus is nowhere near as deadly as we were first led to believe, there are people actively demanding that lockdown measures be more severe and more restrictive, even when the government and healthcare organizations admit that the danger posed does not necessitate such extreme measures. It is honestly really frightening to me to see a large and vocal segment of the human population not only willingly submit to authoritarian control, but cry out for more of it. In the wake of all this, the best advice I can think to offer is that you should not give in to moral panic. I would never encourage anyone to put their lives at unnecessary risk, but at the same time, if you allow fear to govern every choice that you make in life, you might live longer, but it will be a hollow and meaningless existence. That's just about everything I've got to say for today, and as always, I hope that you find at least some of what I've shared to be useful. For now, farewell.